just to mention one thing is we're just now new partners of the Open Voice Network. So the Open Voice Network is essentially run by the Linux Foundation, and they're kind of setting the safeguards and the future and the standards of voice technology. So that's all towards reporting, how systems work. Is there a future where you have an Alexa device and a Google device that are working together? So keep an eye out for those, keep an eye out for some of the work that they're doing, but we're going to start off with a video. So here we go. Come on.
Alexa, how can I heat up my steak bake? Alexa, play Like a Virgin by Madonna.
So hopefully you'll be able to hear that. That was the fantastic Mandy, which is a comedy on the BBC at the moment, and there she was getting slightly confused trying to talk to her toasty maker, thinking it was an Alexa device, wondering how she was going to heat up her steak bake. But the point of that video was that we've kind of got to this stage with voice assistants and technology and smart speakers is now that, you know, it's the norm. It's known, this technology is here, it's staying to this to the extent that, you know, a comedy can have a joke about it, everybody's going to get it. Whereas, you know, other technologies, maybe if it's a joke about NFTs or something, only a certain amount of the populations will get that. And so we can see this with like movies like Jexy. There's a new one coming out called Kimmy Bottom Left. We've seen these Hey Harry adverts. We've seen the memes, Alexa, show me X, Y, and Z. And so we've got to this stage quite simply because of the rate of adoption has been huge in terms of smart speakers. And this graphic basically goes through the fact that within a 5-year period in the US, you've kind of got adoption levels up to 50%. And if you compare that with older technology such as smartphones or TVs or radio or internet, it took, you know, 20 years maybe to get to the same amount of adoption with internet compared to smart speaker, which is done in 5 years. And obviously there's some factors in that, you know, obviously we've got broadband, the cost of creating electronic devices is far, far cheaper. But what that means is that smart speakers are really only the first wave of kind of voice technology. And so far, that first wave has very much been about the smart speaker inside of your house, answering questions, playing music, setting alarms, etc. So today's talk is thinking about how voice is going to expand beyond that. And really what's happened is that smart speakers have been the training wheel. So this is a kind of a notion and a phrase that's from a colleague within the voice industry, Kane Sim, who talks about this kind of, they're the training wheels that's got everybody understanding that there's a device, it has a wake word, you speak to it, you then wait, and then it gives you a response. And if it asks you a question and then it lights up, then you reply with a question, etc. So the smart speakers have done that job training everybody, and now we've got more opportunities to use voice interaction as more people become, you know, more au fait and more happy to work with it. So we're going to go through 8 different scenarios of where this is going to go to, or where it's already going to. So the first of all one is vehicles. So this is the most obvious place for voice control. Obviously you're driving, you're not meant to be touching your phone, you shouldn't really be using internal car controls, and there's a few different scenarios of where voice works really, really well in the car. So that's physical control, so turning the heating up and down, asking for statistics, you know, how much petrol, how far to go, etc. There's the entertainment side of things. So that's maybe, you know, tuning your radio or playing a game or asking for the latest episode of the Football Daily, or asking to listen to the commentary of a particular football game, rather than having to fiddle with a dial and find that information. And then there's the whole area of new technology, which is around kind of ordering and local listings. So finding out, you know, where the closest Tesco is, or pre-ordering food for while you're on, you know, on a motorway journey, etc. And obviously a lot of these technologies that underlie it have all been accelerated with due to COVID, because obviously we've got kind of a lot of pre-ordering systems. Most places you can now order online, you can order from a table. It's the same APIs that would enable this type of interaction. And voice interaction in car will continue to increase, and due to a couple of new laws. So specifically, you've got the new laws coming in the UK in regards to mobile phone usage. So before, you could technically get away with, if you were using your phone to select a playlist, to select a phone, or play a game, you shouldn't have been doing that. But the new laws will now cover that off. So £200 fine. So as that propagates through, people will realize that they need to be using voice technology to complete those tasks. And the other one there is Boris, looking like he's getting ready for another party. He's launching the kind of the 2030 with the no new diesel cars and no new petrol cars. So you've got a whole influx of new cars that are going to be coming through. And so therefore, most of those cars will be having some sort of built-in assistant. So how are these cars adding and implementing voice into this, and how does this interact with a brand? So there's three different scenarios. So you've kind of got 100% Alexa and Google enabled, and so that might be the car manufacturer doesn't want to create their own assistant or own persona, and they're just going to use Google and Alexa. And if you've got an old Qashqai like mine, you'll have to retrofit it with either your phone or with an Amazon Auto device there. The second one is a hybrid, so where you've got your own assistant. So for example, like Hey Mercedes, and then you've got Alexa and Google cohabiting within the one kind of environment. And then in that example, it might be, hey, Mercedes occupies all the commands for internal control, whereas Alexa and Google do entertainment and other kind of Alexa skills and actions. And then the final one in this example, you kind of got OK Honda powered by SoundHound, where it's kind of everything is done by OK Honda. So there's no Alexa, there's no Google in that scenario. And in this scenario, it's really interesting because it's kind of like, what happens if a customer asks a question about my brand, or tries to find out a location, or tries to find out how to pre-order? And obviously with the Alexa and the Google ecosystems, there's Alexa Skills and Google Actions, which we produce for clients that, it's a omnipresent OS. If you do that for the smart speaker at home, it's also going to be doing it for the smart assistant within your car. Whereas for OK Honda or a custom assistant, it needs to be a little bit more integrated into the fact that, are they going to have a platform for brands to publish Alexa skills on, or are they going to be pulling in third-party information into it? Second one, Ruby mentioned this before, wearables. So there's a few different flavors in that. The biggest one is obviously at this moment in time, it's in a headphone devices which have the assistant built into them. So either that's by saying the wake word or pressing the button. But here the really interesting thing, and not many brands have looked into this, is that by having a wearable device, you're going to get more data. So you'll get location data, accelerometer, heart rate, temperature, maybe with other kind of devices. And so that opens up the opportunity for a use case that wouldn't have worked at home in the living room, but it could start to work in a location. So that might be an area of an outstanding natural beauty, or within a city, and then you can go on a walking tour, and then you can use the location data to change the content, etc. So wearables, although the interaction is slightly different, the more interesting point of there is the new data that and use cases that opens up. Smart glasses as well, we've seen this in the past, are they kind of making a comeback? And then you've got Ray-Bans with the version with Facebook. So in that example, you've got the invocation phrase of, hey, Facebook, play music, take a picture, do whatever else there. But again, do you need to build something separately for that Facebook ecosystem, or will they start to integrate the fact that if you integrate your shopping cart into Facebook, or if you've got a conversational messenger with Facebook for business, and then can it be accessed through there? And the last one, which is something I don't know too much about, but it seems like you have to mention it, the metaverse is obviously in that example where you've got your VR headset on or your goggles, etc. It's going to be used for control. You might not want to be typing, you might not want to be reaching down to a keyboard or a virtual keyboard. So in that example, you can use your voice for something like search or for FAQ. The other thing that's interesting there is voice changing technology. So if you've seen a film from last year, Free Guy, And in that example, it's kind of a virtual universe, and the actress there, she's an American, but within the game, she's got an English accent, and she's using voice changing technology, which is developing quite fast. So is that the chance for voice technology to be used there? But if you're not stuck in the metaverse and you're actually getting out because you're not isolating due to COVID, then there's a potential to use voice within point of sale. So within a shop or within a train station. There's some really good examples of this already. So in Taiwan, here you've got the example of going up to the ticket machine, and rather than having to touch the different buttons, or maybe for an accessibility reason you can't do that, you can just press, you can use the wake word and you can talk and you can make your request. And from a UX point of view, it could actually mean a shorter journey for the user, as in they can just say, I need 2 tickets returned to Sheffield, and that would have been 10 or 12 different clicks on the screen. The other example, which is coming quite fast, and this is Checkers, but McDonald's have been doing this as well, is outsourcing some of those kind of jobs where it was a human having to listen, and then they can do the order for your food while you're queuing up using a voice assistant. So a limited domain in terms of the domain of that is just food. The domain of the voice assistant on the ticket machine is just tickets. It's not going to play music and tell you the weather. And that's okay, because the context of the user is, I'm only going to ask this thing about food or train tickets. And then the other place is within app and within website, and this is basically applicable to most companies. And in the finance industry, and especially in the USA, they've been really kind of moving forward with this quickly. And so you've kind of got the idea of a custom assistant, which has a limited domain living within the app. So this is not an assistant that you can talk to on Alexa or Google or at the iOS level on your phone, but within the app. And so the most known example of this is Bank of America with Erica. So the Erica is the persona that they created for this. It's done crazy numbers. 250 million questions have been answered by Erica. You've got 20 million clients that are using it. And then you've got other banks that have then been following suit. So you kind of got US Bank. And in this example, you've got the idea that voice is quicker than typing and touching for particular requests. You might not want the voice assistant to come back and read out your spending history because it's a graph, so you want to see that data. So that's where you're kind of mixing modality in terms of voice as an input, but then you kind of got voice and maybe audio and visual as an output. And there's obviously some great accessibility and usability points of views. But one of the reasons why banks are probably doing this and not creating Alexa skills or Google Actions, I mean, there's some policy reasons as well, but this means that the data stays within your domain. So they're not having to build this on the Alexa stack or the Google stack. They may be using bits of that or separately via AWS, but the idea is that then they're much more in control over this. The other thing that's really interesting here is that it opens up kind of increasing feedback and insights with what we call fallback requests. So a fallback request is where you ask an assistant a question and then it can't answer you. And so then you go, sorry, I can't answer that. And what's interesting there is that you're basically going to start to gain insights into, oh, some people want to know this type of information. And therefore we should add that as a feature. We should add that as data that is available. If you don't have an assistant, people can only tap and touch what's on the screen. So they won't try and they won't find those edge use cases or those different use cases as well. Now that example is with creating your own assistant, which is a lot of work. But there's also the idea of app actions. So this is interwoven within the OS on your phone. So here you can start the conversation by saying, hey Google, track my run with Adidas running. That opens up Adidas and app and it starts to run. So that could be something like Rightmove, hey, show me 3-bedroom properties in Manchester under £250,000, and then it will open that specific search. So the idea is it shortcuts. It's still in its infancy in terms of education of users. Does the wider population know about this? Which obviously Google and Apple especially can do with above the line marketing to let them know there. But the idea is you want to be the first one to implement that, so that the user just gets used to just saying the command and then it opens the app. And there's equivalents of app actions on Alexa if you're running Alexa on your phone and with Siri. On the website side of things, if you go through this example here, so looking at e-commerce search with faceted navigation, this example here, 8 clicks, 15 seconds, just to show me Samsung TVs that are more than £300 but less than 500. And so the idea here is that we don't want voice as the output method, but we do want it as the kind of the input method. And so if we go to the second example, we've just kind of got 1 click, 6.5 seconds to accomplish the same task. So we'll just listen to this.
Show me Samsung TVs from $400 to $750.
So in that example, we can see that it was using the existing UI on the page, and because the web page, most e-commerce use kind of dynamic loading, it can automatically change as the user's talking. And also with this technology, you can also then refine and amend. We're not suggesting the person's going to buy it and complete it, because the idea is that you're getting the users through to their products quicker. But again, you could then start to find people asking for particular attributes that you've not thought about. So they might actually say with bevels, I don't know, the word that goes around the kind of the round the edge of, less than a centimeter. Ah, right, people are interested in that particular attribute. Have I added that attribute into my website? Yes or no? Then they can add that, and then that becomes searchable. The office. So not particularly a great place for voice interaction. When I've in the past testing Alexa skills and Google Action in the office, it's really loud. I have to try and find a little corner to sit in or do it with my headphones on. But with an increasing split workforce, tech can help, smooth over communication problems. And here the example here is meeting room management and business intelligence. So Amazon have their product Alexa for Business, and some of that's just book this meeting room, who's in this meeting room, start the Zoom call, add John to the call, etc. But then there's also the ability to launch custom voice apps that only can be accessed by the business, which has business intelligence. So like, how many rugs did we sell last year? So you can imagine being in a meeting, you need to know that answer rather than having to call somebody in or sit there and work out that information. You can ask Alexa and get that information in there. Or is a certain person working from home today? Or there may be a daily business review. So more and more companies are looking to do this within those rooms. And also what we found is that even if you can try and get the majority of people in for a meeting on a particular day, you always end up with 1 or 2 that are not coming in. And so being able to kind of add them in easily onto the call helps. And the other side of this is that if you are working at home, you as a business could then buy an Alexa device for your staff member, and they can run it on the same system. So they can then, ask to join the call, they can ask those same business information, and it gives a much more comfortable setup for that user. It gives them a device that they can use and utilize at home as well. Residential, so similar flavor, but here this is in terms of 2 kind of scenarios. So one is if you've got if you're selling or renting out flats, and one of these ones where it's pre-furnished, all your bills are included, it's service managed. What you can start to do is you could have a fleet of devices. So every flat comes with Alexa, which is pre-installed, pre-enabled up to the smart oven and what else, but also then can do stuff like answer questions. What day did the bins go out? I need to order a service request, etc. You could then charge an extra premium for that feature to be added to that property, etc. And then from a care home perspective, accessibility So some of the older generation, maybe use of a tablet or a phone may have passed them. Their eyesight might not be as great, whereas they can access information via Alexa. You can preset alarms for people, preset reminders to take medication, etc. So there's two really good use cases there, but again, has to integrate with internal systems and FAQ systems. And the final one, which we're really interested in, is around hotels and hospitality. And so here, we'll go through a quick demo to give myself a bit of a break, and then we'll go through a little bit more of the details.
Alexa, can I book a table at the restaurant?
Great. I just need to know for how many people and when.
2 people at 8 p.m. tonight.
Great. 2 people for 8 p.m. tonight. That's booked. I've just sent an email to the address on your room reservation. If you need to cancel or change the booking, just ask me to change restaurant booking. Or call the restaurant by saying, "Call restaurant."
So the Alexa for Hospitality product essentially is a smart speaker per room, and it does all the things that you do, at home. So play music, set alarms, pre-configured to control the lights or etc. But there's also the idea of ordering food, ordering a turn down service, asking for a new toothbrush, etc. There's the ability to use it for internal calling, so call reception, etc. And from the user's perspective, they don't have to walk all the way down to reception to ask their request, and they don't need to wait on the phone holding on. And then from the hotel's perspective, it's potential to increase revenue with those extra orders, but also kind of staff utilization. It's really hard to kind of get staff within the hospitality sector at this moment in time. So can Alexa take some of that workload off by answering some of those small and simpler questions, etc. And the final one,
Alexa,
is another video.
Alexa, how many stars are there in the sky?
It depends on where you are on the planet, but there are 100 billion stars in our galaxy.
Alexa, how cold is outer space?
Outer space is generally around -455 degrees Fahrenheit.
Alexa, can we go to space?
Sure, welcome aboard Orion.
Alexa, what do we eat in space?
So that's obviously a little bit of a marketing ploy, but on the kind of the Orion missions in the future, there'll be an Alexa device on there kind of controlling and being able to be asked. So yeah, it's going into space. I'm not sure if Jeff is going to be on that flight or not. So recap questions for you is, you got to be starting to think is like, how can voice be integrated into your product? So if you're selling a product, if you're selling a subscription service of some sort, how do you allow people to access that service via the device that's going to be in their car, in their home, in their ears, etc.? Or is it a physical product? Do you sell TV set-top boxes? Do you sell ticketing machines and then you need to have voice in there? Or do you have an existing digital asset? Can you add voice in there as a new interaction method? Do the new locations open up different use cases for voice? So something that wouldn't have worked in home. It's not, we're not a brand where you'd ask that at home, but maybe we're a brand where it's a physical location that you visit. So there's the chance to open up that new chance of voice interaction. Underpinning all of this has to be, have you got the data? Have you got the APIs and authentication? Because a lot of these things need to be authenticated for Alexa to play, your Spotify, or for Alexa to answer questions about your subscription services. You need to be able to have authentication so it knows that, it's the right account that it's connecting to. Do you have that? And are you setting up your business in such a way that you're thinking beyond, oh, we're just a website? We're actually essentially a database with a way to connect to that information. And then the other side of things, more on the content marketing, is that if we've got content that we need to store and we need to edit and to power this experience, how does that align with traditional web copy? We don't want to get to the situation where we've got copy on our website which answers customers' questions. Then we've got copy in a database here which Alexa's using. Do we need to think about headless CMS systems where we have a centralized resource where we've got, here's the answer audibly, here's the answer via our app, here's our answer via Alexa, etc. So there's those kind of questions to be thinking about. So I think I've gone a little bit over time, I'm sorry, but the others have been quite quick. So yeah, there's lots of stuff on the website, just like Ruby, just like Paige before. One thing I would suggest is have a look at the voice search keyword tool, which is a slice of data of what people are actually asking Alexa. You'll be amazed at what people ask Alexa. So you can go in there and you can search for it and find that information.
I have no doubt.
Okay.
That was super interesting, slightly scary, but thank you very much. So if anyone's got any questions for JC, please pop them in the Q&A. We've got some already that I'll read out. So there were a lot of places in the talk where we can see voice being used outside the home. Which of these do you think we'll see UK brands launching or investing in this year?
I think the in-app one in the finance side of things is really interesting. I think we'll see more kind of companies who may have thought they didn't want to go and build an Alexa skill or a Google action, but they can see value where they control the data and it's all within their own kind of thing. And we saw an experiment with the BBC with Beeb, but it was very limited in terms of where that was launched. But I can imagine something like that on the web app side of things. And then maybe some of the e-commerce may look at it, but just in the idea of the finding your products quicker and quicker interaction, definitely on mobile.
Yeah, nice. I can see that. And in the example you gave, a company would end up having a voice assistant on many Alexas, their websites, app, and in-store. What do brands need to think about from a branding and user experience perspective to create a consistent approach?
Yeah, so on that one, it's important for them to think about how do they approach it. Do they want to create a persona like Erica, and does Erica live on all of these different systems, and then how does Erica sound? Is Erica a man or a woman? Is it gender neutral? Do they use an off-the-shelf voice? Do you pay for a custom voice to be created? So I think that's important. And then it's also taking your maybe existing tone of voice and then actually saying, well, how does this sound? How would we say these different things? So I think that's important. But at the same time, we've still got devices with screens on them. There's two up there. And so therefore you need to think about the visuals of these devices as well. And yeah, and unfortunately with Alexa and Google, there are like restrictions that you have to play within. And in the example there we heard with the hotels, we got a voiceover artist because we could use a voiceover artist to record all the combinations of 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. But if we had something more dynamic like the menu, we'd have to use Alexa. So how does then that co-inhabit? You have Alexa with a persona at the same time. Do you do a handover? So, but yeah, I think from the lack of visuals, it's then all about how does it sound. So that's the brand consideration, the branding consideration.
Yeah, so quite a lot to consider there. And so if a brand hasn't done any voice work yet, where is the best place to start?
My honestly advice is just start asking questions to the voice assistant about your business and just see what happens. And so is it answering? Is it not answering? Have a look at what competitors are doing. But you might want to have a look at what competitors in the US are doing, because they seem to be still 1-2 years ahead. And so whatever's happening over there is more than likely to happen over here as well. Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, John.